Hello, welcome to the Data Channel. Today, as part of the system design series for data engineers, we are bringing up the next video that is to understand proxy versus reverse proxy. This is the most probably you might have heard this concept when you are working in DevOps or networking, but this particular video is more from understanding this concept from data engineering lens. Why should you, as a data engineer, care about understanding this? And we will see that. And because proxies directly impact the data ingestion, so you might be using API based enrichment. So you're talking about building a compliance pipelines and also secure access to the data platforms, right? So when you're thinking about these aspects as a data engineer, so this reverse proxy and proxy will really matter. So by end of this video, you will exactly know how proxy and reverse proxy will fit for your data engineering pipelines and when to use these. Before proceeding, if you're new to this channel, we would recommend you to please subscribe and also press bell button for instant notifications. So let's get started. So at a high level, these are the topics that we'll be covering. So what exactly the proxy and reverse proxy means and why they are important for the data engineers to understand. And what is proxy? What is reverse proxy at a high level? And what exactly the quick comparison between these two? And also we will take a case study and see how these fit into that case study. And also some challenges and best practices. So first of all, let's understand as a data engineers, right? So we need to pull the data from external APIs, and you need to ingest the data from customer and partners. There will be a lot of different sources, and you have different sources like maybe real-time streaming and batch streaming. So you need to secure the access, whether it is a Kafka, whether it is a Spark job or Spark connectors you are using, and Delta Lake clusters you are using, right? And also there is compliance related things will come, right, where you have to your project has to comply for a GDPR, HIPAA, and this kind of regulator compliance and regulatory stuff. So then definitely these proxies and real proxies will actually be very important. And these acts like gatekeepers for securing, securing and also building a scalable pipelines, and also keeping you like compliance safe. That is the core intention of why data engineers need to understand this concept. So we are not expecting data engineers to understand to at a networking level, but as a data engineers, how it impacts your day-to-day operation, or how exactly it impacts the pipeline scalability, how making the pipelines more secure. So all these aspects, right? So that is where it is important to understand proxy and reverse proxy from that lens. So now let's move on and see what exactly the proxy means. So we're talking about two things, right? One is proxy and other one is reverse proxy. So first of all, a proxy means it is nothing but a forward proxy, also we can call it as. A forward proxy or just a proxy sits between your ETL or ELT job and the internet. So as you can see, this is like it is sitting between the your ETL and ELT job, and so wherever you are doing the operations at the front end, right? So here is you're writing the pipelines, and between that, and where these are the data sources, between that the forward proxy sits. So that is the forward proxy, and like from the data engineering perspective, so the forward proxy will be mainly used when you're building the external API calls. Say, for example, your pipeline enriches customer data with Salesforce or Weather API, and there is a corporate policy might force all these calls through a proxy for monitoring purpose. And also you can use it for a caching, right? If your pipeline calls the same API repeatedly, for example, forex rates every minute it is getting called, then you can use a proxy cache that can significantly save the cost and improve the speed as well. So you need to understand it's not just about securing. It is like there are multiple other areas that it benefits, all right? And also access control, which is a key thing why the proxies are used. So proxies are mainly used for this, right? So to have access control, they will have that proxy restriction, which APIs or the endpoints your ATL jobs can reach, right? So not everybody can come and reach the servers, because these proxy, that forward proxy, can act as a gatekeeper, and it will basically whitelist the IPs that are supposed to be given access to the actual resources, right? So that way it acts as a key gatekeeper for access control, and you can use it for caching, and also like save like external API calls where you're using, right? So in that cases you can use, and you can also audit, monitor from the operational perspective. You can do that monitoring as well, because you can have that visibility because you're auditing. So instead of auditing 10 to different servers, what's happening for them, so you can audit this gatekeeper, so that you know what is going and coming from inside like between the systems, right? So that is where it is basically used. And proxies are basically like controls, it is nothing but it controls and secures the outbound traffic from your job. So that is a key intention. And you can see ETL will be there, then proxy, then you have API, then you will get a response back. So that is a real flow that you can think of. So next, moving on to the reverse proxy. So reverse proxy is actually sits in front of your server, right? Not in between. So it sits in front of your server or ingestion endpoints, and these basically are used in data engineering. Like again, ingestion pipelines is a common use case when partners or the app pushes the JSON or CSV data, and they might request first hit the reverse proxy, which handles SSL authentication and routing. So for all of these aspects, we'll be using reverse proxy. And also like Kafka, if you are having a real-time ingestion or near real-time, Kafka REST proxy you can use. That is for common reverse proxy that lets producer and consumers talk to Kafka over HTTP instead of native protocol. And even if you talk about Spark and Databricks UI, often fronted by the reverse proxies like NGINX and Envoy. So they are secure and not directly exposed. So that is why if you're using managed services like Databricks, Azure backed services, so these will be working in the background. So you need not, as a data engineer, you will not much worry about these things. But from the architecture lens, from the enterprise architecture lens, you need to understand this. Or if you are not using managed services or cloud services, though, then these reverse proxy and proxies are very important to understand. Okay, so then there will be no compromise, because you need to have this control, this kind of controls. And also, next is the load balancing, right? So reverse proxies distribute the ingestion request across multiple servers. Okay, that's the key here, right? And or the microservices. It might be multiple servers or microservices internally to build to prevent bottlenecks. So it dynamically makes this entire system as a distributed system, because it works as a load balancer in the reverse proxy. Reverse proxy basically protects and scales inbound traffic into your system. So on the contrary, what we have seen is the proxy was controlling the outbound traffic for your jobs. But reverse proxies are actually scaling the inbound jobs into your data system. So it depends on whether you're building a inbound jobs or whether you're building a outbound jobs, right? So you're pushing the data or pulling the data. It completely depends on that, which use case that you are actually having a reverse proxy or proxy. So here it is, there is a client and there is a reverse proxy, and then actually there is a data systems. So this is about the reverse proxy. And when we move about having this quick comparison about this, again, this is again from the data engineering perspective. So if you take general proxy and reverse proxy comparison, it might be completely different. So this is purely from the data engineering lens. You want to understand what exactly the difference. So proxy is basically what it does is you have an outbound job and then you have an ETL job, right? And then you have proxy, then you have API, and then actually the data fetch happens securely over the internet. Okay. However, in case of reverse proxy, so basically it is, as I said, it is basically used for inbounds, and you have a client partner, and then you have a reverse proxy, then ingestion services, and then data lands into the data lake. Okay, that is the inbound. Okay, so that's the basic difference here. So when you are want to expose the data to the external world, and or you can push the data to external world, right? So there you are using the proxy because it's outbound. The data is going out, right? Like when you talk about reverse proxy, it is when you're pulling the data from external system to into your system. So then you'll be mostly using the reverse proxy. So that's the thumb of the rule, right? And so the simple thumb of rule here is proxy is nothing but you can say my job actually calling the outside world. Okay, and reverse proxy is nothing but the outside world calling my system. Okay, it might be like it's nothing but like the data is coming into my system, the reverse proxy. Okay, So with that, like the main role here is for the proxy, if you consider, like it controls the outbound request, and reverse proxy, the main job is to secure and scale the inbound traffic, because here you're bringing the data in. Okay. When you talk about pushing the data, then you have to control that outbound request. And so this is the key differences. And if you talk about the key benefits, so like proxies are basically used like for monitoring, caching, and having the compliance related policies. And reverse proxy will be used for like SSL termination, load balancing, etc. Because you're bringing the data in, so you need to have that row balancing enabled. Okay. So this, like if you go to the technicality of this, the stories is different. But what we are explaining the difference here is purely from the data engineering point of view. So yeah, so this is the difference, and let's start from the case study here in this slide. So we will take an example of a customer 360 pipeline, which is global customer 360. And if you see this, right, so this is one of the use case and how this inbound and outbound, that is proxy and reverse proxy, is fitting here, right? So inbound data ingestion, if you're talking about, so where external partners send the event into your platform, or you pull the data into your platform. End of the day, the data is coming into your system. That is inbound. So request hit a reverse proxy that checks JWT tokens and handles SSL terminations and load balances across ingestion servers, right? So that is where the reverse proxy is coming and sitting in the inbound jobs. Talk about the outbound jobs where your Spark jobs calls a third party API. Okay, and after doing a certain enrichment and or it might be push or it might be pull from a third party API. It doesn't matter, but ultimately the data is going out of your system where these calls go through a forward proxy, which logs all the outbound traffic, caches API, repeated APIs, responses, and enforces certain compliance. And finally, you have cluster access, like suppose as the engineers access Spark UI and Kafka APIs, right? So via reverse proxies like NGINX, ensuring that the clusters are never directly exposed. So that is why you see Databricks, you talk about Databricks, you talk about Azure, AWS resources, right? So they have a strong reverse proxy setup, and all the requests that you are making or you are interacting with those managed services will have to go through reverse proxies. So that is why it is kind of a basically used for securing the systems. So reverse proxy is not only like these are the not only source to secure the systems, because there will be a lot of security levels, but these are one of the security level to kind of safeguard the what is it, the pipelines or the data or the access part of it. So this basically setup that ensures your platform is secure, compliant, and also scalable. So this is how it can look like. And if you talk about the proxies and reverse proxies challenges from the data engineering lens, right? Like one is the latency. So API jobs can slow down if reverse proxies caching is not is might be misconfigured, right? So always it comes with challenges. If there is a chance to create like a caching using proxy, but if it is misconfigured, so then obviously it will impact the API jobs and it might impact the latency of your job. And maybe there is a configuration drift for if you take SSL certification, routes and tokens can be a nightmare. So and this is a configuration drift that can happen. And it might have a single point of failure, because if the proxy goes down, ingestion or enrichment job fails. So that is where it is challenging, and it makes it a single point of failure. And also your like compliance and logging overhead will be there, so you keep on logging the data, so you need to use that data whatever is getting logged. With that, we will move to the next slide to understand what are the best practices or key practices you need to consider when you are thinking about proxies and reverse proxies from data engineering lens. The first and foremost thing is always secure inbound ingestion job APIs behind the reverse proxy, and route all the external API enrichment calls through proxy for monitoring, and use caching smartly. Okay, when you're having like for example, the forex rates don't need to refresh every second, so you need to cache those kind of data into like a like into that proxies servers itself, so that you get more performance, or it's like you can scale it to the multiple vendors, right? and also enabling the observability. So you need to keep on monitoring these because, as I said, it might be a single point of failure if something goes wrong. So you need to keep log both of inbound and outbound traffic. So that is where you get the complete picture of how many requests are coming in and how many requests are going out. What is the volume of data coming in, coming out, going out, right? So all that can be monitored. That is a best practice, and that is a you can make the best utilization of these proxies. And also, there is no, please ensure that there is no redundancy for proxies to avoid the outage. There might be redundant requests coming in, so you need to avoid that so that your proxies are not overloaded. So these are the like key best practices you can think of. Okay. And the main thing here is proxies, as I said, like outbound protection for the ETL pipelines, job fetching. This act like outbound protection. And reverse proxy, like it becomes like a shield for inbound jobs and for ingestion services and data platforms. So together, they ensure that scalability, security, and compliance across the entire pipeline that you are building, the orchestrated pipeline that you are building end to end. So these are the best practices you can think of and you can consider. So with that, we are coming to the end of the video, and that's related to proxy and reverse proxy specifically for data engineers. So next, we will bring up more design concepts for data engineers, and hope this was useful. Thanks for watching.